Hi, folks. Robert Quigley here, Washington, D.C., the Money Pit Group. We're on the road to the White House. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, push the subscribe button below. Add your comments, join the conversation. Let us know where I'm right, where I'm wrong, how you can contribute to the conversation. Off we go. Today we have to deal with more finance issues. More specifically, we have to deal with the oil trade. Futures trading generally, more specifically commodities. What we have going on across the world right now is we have soaring energy prices. We have soaring food prices. We have a raging war in Ukraine. We have oil suppliers manipulating the market like there's no tomorrow. We have oil traders, aka speculators, that are manipulating the energy markets like there's no tomorrow. We need to go through this in detail. We've got some suggestions for reform. We got some things that we're going to do when we get to the White House. But first, let's look at the facts. I wonder if the world knows that we are sitting on a 500-year supply of oil. When you turn on your daily news and you listen to the pundits talk, do not believe them for 1 minute. We know where the oil is located under the oceans. We know where they're located in the United States and in Canada and almost every country on the planet. We know that if we burn oil at the current rate, we will have oil for 500 years. Okay, so why in the world are oil prices skyrocketing? I'm going to cover that in a minute. Let's look at some other facts. Do we know that the United States has more than 100,000 oil wells? The vast majority of those oil wells are capped. Now, we know this to be a fact because the federal government, through the Energy Department, has gone out and paid states a mountain of money to cap unused oil wells to prevent carbon from escaping and other chemicals that will cause global warming. So we know that oil wells are there. We know that oil is underneath the ground. I wonder if the world knows that the United States has the largest natural gas field on the planet. It basically sits under a very large portion of New England. And does the country also know that this is an untapped resource? We've got it. It's unused. Now, none of this is by accident. I mean, granted, folks may not be aware of it, but the leaders of the federal government decades ago, going back to the 50s and the time of Hubbard, made the decision that it was much, much better for the United States to be the last country to run out of oil and gas than to be the first country to run out of oil and gas. In other words, we're going to use everybody else's natural energy resources, and when that's gone, that's when we will use ours like there's no tomorrow. That was the thinking of the day. That's what's been going on. Let's go to the next issue. Does the country know that in 2019, prior to the pandemic, there were 1,600 plus, I forgot the exact number, 1,650, 1,680, somewhere in the 1,600 oil wells were in operation in the United States producing oil. And post-pandemic, we only have 600 plus oil wells in use in the United States. So what has happened? Well, let me tell you what happened. The oil companies shut down more than 1,000 of those oil wells. It's actually more than 1,100 during the pandemic. They closed them down. And when they realized that the demand was going to come surging back, they have done everything within their power to keep the production of oil down. Now, they will tell you the opposite story. When they're interviewed on TV, when they make conferences, they will give us reasons like there are not enough employees, it costs too much, we don't have the oil, so on and so forth. It's all BS. The United States is being held hostage by the oil and gas industry, and we are being held up for a king's ransom. And just yesterday, I was listening to people talk on this issue. Uh, you don't understand oil. There's going to be money to go into oil exploration. Banks won't lend to oil companies, and because the government said don't lend to oil companies, and so forth and so on. Yet, most oil companies have a break-even price of $30 per barrel. That means today the price of oil, I'm going to look right over here at my commodity chart, for example. As I talk, the price of oil, WTI, which is West Texas oil, is selling for $100.39. So that means that for every barrel of oil that's produced, the oil company has got $70 in change in profits. And we are producing oil by the millions of barrels uh, uh, today per day. I mean, it's a massive amount of oil. So the oil companies are using this money to give the profits to the shareholders. Whoever's a shareholder is getting huge paychecks. And this includes the executives of oil companies because they all are big shareholders in their firms. That's gouging. That is absolutely unacceptable. A fair price of oil is somewhere in the $60 range, the $65 range. So we are being ripped off, and Americans know it. They can feel it, but they just don't know where the problem is and how to solve the problem. But I'm going to go through some of these sort of hidden facts here in a minute, and I'm going to show you where the problem is. I'm going to show you how easy it is to solve the problem. Now, I want to make a statement. If you know some of my videos, I've been very careful not to criticize the current Biden administration because there are many things that they've done right, like, for example, their handling of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and but there are many things that there are some things that have been done really, really badly, and of course, this is the entire energy oil front. And if you notice the parallel between Jimmy Carter in the 1970s, Democrats, by and large, don't understand the commodity and energy complex. They're not down in the nitty gritty trenches of entrepreneurialism. So they've got shortcomings. I mean, no one's perfect. I mean, I'm not the most perfect guy either, but I know what I know, and what I know, I'm sure can help the American public greatly. But on this particular topic, I have to say the Biden administration, Democrats generally are out of the loop. They're being Jimmy Cartered by the Republicans, and this is probably why the Democrats are going to lose. Not probably. This is going to be the main reason why the Democrats lose the midterm elections coming up in a few months. But like I said, I just want to reiterate, I'm not a negative guy on the Biden administration because there are some things that they have done right. Like most independents, I mean, you'll know exactly the mind frame that I'm talking about. When we're in the middle, we see the good and the bad on both sides of the aisle. And, this is why we're coming into existence here. So we can pull the good from both sides of the aisle, and hopefully in the process we have very little bad. All right, so let's move on here. Let me have a quick look at my notes. Um, Now, what I'm about ready to say, oil, is also going to apply to commodities. So let's just go a little bit further here. Commodities, if we're talking about corn, wheat, soybeans, rice, food commodities generally are soaring because the Ukraine was such a massive producer of wheat, for example. The world's about ready to have a hunger problem, and this is Russia's fault. But I don't want to focus too much on that right now because I'm going to focus on the trading mechanics of why these things are so expensive. It's very easy to blame the Russians for high commodity prices. Um, Commodity food prices are needed for human survival. Every country, every person on the planet needs it. And we all know that Russia is a massive producer of oil. And when you kind of step back and you think about just that fact, you really wonder what was one of the major reasons Russia invaded the Ukraine. In my opinion, and I'm not in the mind of Vladimir Putin, but in my own surmised opinion and observer of the facts, I highly suspect that the Russians have been manipulating the oil prices, and I'm going to explain how in a minute. and that whole invasion of Ukraine was partly to push up the oil prices because they are a major world exporter, producer and exporter of oil. So essentially, let me explain the mechanism of what happens. So we've got something called the Chicago Board of Exchange in the United States, and there's a contract. There's an oil contract. We're going to boil it down to its simplest form. There's an oil contract. There are metals contracts. There are agricultural contracts, and anybody can buy and sell these contracts. We basically have two kinds of contracts. One kind of contract is for the speculator, and let's underline that word 3 times because that's going to be the focus of the law reform. And that contract settles in money. So people can buy and sell these contracts of oil, these contracts of wheat and corn and soybeans and so forth, but they don't ever take delivery of the product. They're not intended to take delivery of the product. They're financial people playing a game of speculation, hoping to capture a profit on the price move. And as it turns out, when you compare the second group, which is the people who actually touch the oil, who actually use the oil and refine it into other petrochemicals, which, by the way, I need to put a footnote here. Oil is in almost every product we buy today. And I'm not only talking about the transportation issue, but I'm talking about the derivative chemicals. So synthetic clothing, for example, or your kitchenware and plastics and so on. I mean, there are so many products. We were talking about hundreds of thousands of products have an oil component in it. And so I'll just give you one little example of this. 2 days ago, I was out in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, not too far from D.C., about an hour and 40 minutes from D.C. Stopped at the local store and bought a V8 juice. And the V8 juice, I forgot what the ounce was, but let's just say it was 12 or 16 ounces. But there was a plastic bottle version, and there was an aluminum can version. Everything about these two containers was exactly the same in terms of the product inside. The same amount, the same manufacturing process, the same health and nutritional benefits. But the plastic bottle was a good dollar more, almost 89 cents more, something like that, compared to the aluminum can. And of course, the reason why is because plastic is a derivative of oil. So every plastic bag that we use in society, every plastic bottle we use in society would not exist if it wasn't for oil. And as a and so the oil price goes up. As a consequence, all this packaging, this plastic packaging goes up. And then we have this crazy price disparity. I went to the register, asked the guy which one's cheaper. I bought the aluminum can one. It just stuck in my head because I'm thinking we don't need these plastic containers across the society. It makes no sense. But in terms of going back to the point of the conversation is in terms of the commodity oil. We've got speculators and we've got users of the product. So the Chicago Board of Exchange allows speculators to buy and sell these products. And herein lies the problem. We have an oil price surge. We have a commodity price surge. First and foremost, the reason is because we let speculators, millions of speculators with a little bit of money jumping in and out of these future contracts, pushing up the price. Oh my God, if anyone who listens to this channel, if you would have listened to CNBC since last November, they have had analysts after analysts after analysts. We're talking about energy analysts, commodity analysts, all going on, drumbeating the price of oil, telling the world how expensive oil was going to be. We're going to reach $200 a gallon, $250 a gallon. And all at the same time, these speculators are out there buying and selling these contracts with very large sums of money. We're talking about billions upon billions of dollars. Now, if we understand the basic mechanics of the financial markets, if there are more buyers and sellers of something at any given time, the price is going up. If there are more sellers than buyers at any given time, the price is going down. We can dig into the details of the commodity markets, for example, and the oil markets. We can look at something called the COT report. It's put out by the federal government. I mean, I can go down this road in expert technical analyst way, but I'm just trying to point out here what the general problem is and how we're going to fix it. So what's the problem? The problem is we should have never allowed speculators to trade in oil and food and metal products. This is nonsense. Uh, you know, Wall Street and the Chicago Board of Exchange somehow, some way, were able to convince the powers that be, 125 years ago, that it was a good idea for speculators to jump into trading these near and dear commodity products, which humans cannot survive without. And today we're now seeing very easily, loudly, and clearly in front of us that speculation in the commodity and food markets is causing the demise of humans. We're going to see massive hunger deaths this year. The U.S. has already cut its use of gasoline by 30% in 2022. So we've got to bring this to an end. So during the Quigley administration, one of the first things I'm going to do is we're going to pass a law and we are going to remove speculators from the futures markets. The idea that we need these people to figure out what the price is not helpful when the only thing these folks are doing are buying and selling for price on a contract that's only going to be settled in cash. No. The way we determine what a price is to figure out what the users of oil are going to buy and sell it for, and what the users of food commodities are going to buy and sell it for. Because obviously, if someone is just after speculation money, they're going to come up with any number of nonsensical reasons to support their reasoning. So underneath the Quigley administration, we're going to limit speculators to trading in gold, which is really mostly a safe haven asset anyways, in indices, in interest rates, and in the VIX. All other commodities, we're talking about food commodities, we're talking about oil commodities, energy commodities, metal commodities, everything else that has an actual use in our day-to-day life and contributes to the manufacturing and production processes that are in the human experience. Those are going to be off limits to speculators. Just by doing that one thing, I guarantee you, if I could flip a switch today, if I was already in the White House today, and if I could just sign an executive order that said that's it, speculators are out, we would see within a matter of minutes the price of oil would go from that $100 to probably about $50, $55, and it would just be mind-blinkingly fast. Wow, and that's the way it should be, because we've got such a speculation premium in the market right now it's creating it's got a stranglehold on the lifeblood of things that folks need to survive in their daily life. So very simple. Speculators are enemies. Users of these commodity and food products are our friends. We help our friends. We eliminate or marginalize our enemies. So there we go, folks. Oh, I got one more point. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Now the next sentence the next little paragraph I'm going to talk about is, it's almost going to make me kind of sound like un-American here, but global warming and energy issues are taking us a place where America has never been before. Everyone knows that we have to transition the U.S. and global economy to a green economy. Everybody knows that. I've just described to you the essential, basic, key problem with the U.S. oil and energy complex. But this is a transition. We can't flip a switch to achieve the goals that we're talking about. We have to transition from a fossil fuel based economy to a green economy. Now here's the problem. We don't have an unlimited amount of time to do this. We have a short amount of time to do this. So now we have to begin to ask ourselves the question. On the one hand, many of us believe that the market is a very good allocator of resources and a very good problem solver in terms of resource distribution. But on the other hand, we can clearly see from this one video that no, that's not exactly the case. That's not always the best solution. So I'm going to put this on the table as a type of food for thought, because we really need to scratch our heads and think about what we're doing. Um, the current administration has not used the Defense Production Act yet to force these oil companies to produce more oil. And neither has the administration used the Defense Production Act to increase the number of solar panels being manufactured, to increase the number of electric cars being manufactured, for example. I'm just pulling this off the top of my head. Um, so I would go as far as saying, we probably made a mistake by saying that all of this oil underneath U.S. ground, and go back to the beginning of the video, I just said there's an awful lot in the U.S. I think it was a mistake with the knowledge of hindsight to have allowed private industry to operate the oil and energy complex. I would put the issue of nationalization on the table. I mean, if I were sitting in the White House, and we will be in the White House one day, this will be a discussion that happens. It may be a much better idea to immediately nationalize the oil and gas industry. And I mean, if you have to go as far as telling the local governor, tell the local National Guard to go take charge of that, or you put in a civilian population of workers, whatever you do. But we need to control the amount of oil that comes out of the ground, the amount of energy coming out, how it's refined, how it's distributed. And obviously, the current owners of oil companies are lining their own pockets. They are valuing profit over the national and international interest. And contrary to the typical capitalistic American view, there are times in life where that cannot be the overriding issue. We are here to help the most possible as we can. And in this case, we're talking about saving the planet, because if the temperature rises, let's just pick some real numbers here. The benchmark of 1.5 degrees Celsius. What if the temperature goes up an average of 3 degrees Celsius? What if we begin to see an exponential increase in global warming? Everyone thinks it's going to be a linear, one step up, one step across type of line, like a 45-degree angle. But what if the curve is actually an exponential curve? What if we're at, let's say we're at 0.5% today, 1% today, but 5 years from now we're at 3% in terms of Celsius degrees. I mean, we can talk in Fahrenheit as well. But what if we get this massive increase in global warming? What if the average temperature in Washington, D.C., for example, which is sort of the middle of America right here where the Chesapeake Bay is, what if it shot up to 100 degrees? Holy cow. I mean, and what if it happened, in the next 7 or 8 years? I mean, it's not a joke, because when you add heat to a system, that's the type of curve that the increase in heat has. It's an exponential curve. It's not a 45-degree linear type of curve. So I'm saying in a sort of a clumsy scientific sort of way that we don't have a lot of time, and nationalization of the oil and energy complex in the United States needs to be on the table. We need to get control of it, and at the same time, we better become very familiar with the Defense Production Act. We need more solar panels. We need solar panels on every roof of every house in the country, more or less. We need wind turbines everywhere they can go. You can there are wind turbines made for the single house, and there are ones that are made for the whole community. These are the things that we have to do, and we have to do it like there's no tomorrow. So that's where I wanted to finish up for this particular video. In some upcoming videos, I'm going to do a rather long video on America's drug crisis. I know way too much about that, but I've got a lot to say on that topic, and a lot of areas for reform that we need to be thinking about. And I'm going to deal with that at some point, and a few other issues need to be dealt with as well. But I hope all is well. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, push the subscribe button below. Add your comments. Join the conversation. We're on the road to the White House. And until we meet again.